Hey guys, it's Baba and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be doing some more birds. I have my little time-lapse thing on the go now with clip too, so I'm going to start using those a little bit more in here. As you can see now with the little process of it. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but I think it took me about 2 streams to get that done. Anyways, on this one, I'm also going to be including all these little sketches that I did beforehand. I wanted to do a bunch of studies of all these different little rafts that I've got, because I didn't like the way that the other one turned out, and maybe it was because I didn't do enough of these kind of things. I kind of did do the same amount, or maybe a little bit more, but I still didn't like the way the other one turned out. You might have seen them just kind of flash on the screen then. Anyway, I'm trying to use the same brush that I've been using for the painting so that I kind of get into the same mood of it. I was trying to use a different one part way through the first set that I did, and I think that might have thrown me off a little bit, but as I'm doing these, I'm kind of thinking of the way that I'm going to be painting it, since I'm kind of sketching in these like big chunks. So I'm kind of doing my sketch lightly first with the same pen, and then going in and blocking it out like this, and I'm trying to put it in, I guess, kind of almost as if it's watercolory, by putting in the big swashes of values onto them and just getting a little bit of shading on the go there, and letting that kind of carry the shape, even though I'm not really defining the edges too much. I'm trying to make them look a little bit line arty, but not too much. And kind of making them a bit thicker, as though they're kind of part of the painting as well. I quite like this one actually, because I think the leaves look quite nice on it, just being big chunks of value like that, and then just a teeny little bit of like darker, more nibbly details on them. I can get very into detail drawing leaves and things when I want to, but I was like, no, careful. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it like really loose. I'm finding with the birds that anything that's fluffy is like more difficult to deal with, just because the fur can kind of expand or contract and change the shape of it. It's not like a solid animal that's hairless, like I guess like a rhino or something, where the skin is just flat against whatever it is, or I guess like a kind of hairless dog or something like that, or an elephant where the form's like very obvious. When you got something fluffy like this, it's just like this bird does not have a neck. The other ones kind of do, but because this one's like squunched up, he has no neck. They're very liquid, kind of like cats. As I went along with these as well, I was trying to do them a bit quicker, but they were still kind of taking me a while, because I was trying to get them quite nice and tidy. I guess, like, relatively, they're not the tidiest, but they are. I'm going to kind of use them later for reference of the way that I've drawn these. Since they're directly from references, it'll kind of help me to compare them to the one that I'm going to draw later, which I'm not really going to do based exactly on a reference. I'm going to try and come up with a pose for them in a minute, once I have all of these sketches done. And then I will roll with it, and like I say, use these and like the images as reference as well for different little bits. What am I doing on this one? I tried to do a thing with the brush where I was just putting the feathers down as like a single brush stroke, and it looks kind of cool actually, but it was very difficult to do, and the brush doesn't really lend itself to it super well. It'd be nice if there was one that worked a little bit better for that though. It kind of only worked at certain angles because of the tilt of it, but yeah, I kind of like what it does with that. It's kind of neat. It seems like it'd be a bugger to do that with any other kind of brush. And then putting little details onto it. I was purposefully trying to keep my sketch like very small as well. Another thing I was kind of noticing is that they have kind of almost a similar build to the way I draw horses. That sounds mad because they're birds, but you've got like this big chunk for the body, and it comes down like into the chest. And then you have sort of like a V shape at the front, almost, you can kind of draw in, where the neck fluff is, where that kind of rolls around. It's just very, very rounded and joins into the rest of everything, as opposed to being a bit more like extended like birds are. It's almost like the fluff kind of rolls around and mimics where the little muscles would be, but not quite. They're not in the same position really. It's just more where it's bumping against the wings and stuff, but That's kind of what it reminded me of, just a little bit in the way I was kind of constructing the fur around them. Since they do have little intersections between the bits that move, like you can see where it kind of bulges out and then rounds out just a little bit where the feathers are, especially around the neck where it, has to move and joins to different bits. Oh, this little round one. Look at how round this one is compared to the last one that was real skinny. This is the kind of thing I mean where they're just like, oh, sometimes they're like a whole less tennis ball, sometimes they're like real skinny. It's very odd. I think I was having a little bit more luck with shading these when I was plumping a very big section of just value on and then erasing the outside so that I could control it a little bit easier and not have to worry about it making a mess as much. It's a little bit more helpful. Also, those like weighted lines around the outside, I'm like really trying to push with those. I didn't go quite as heavy on them on the final thing, but I want to in the other ones. This one I did ended up looking a little bit more towards realism. Here I go with trying to like sketch out a pose anyway. I'm kind of using my own ones as refs and thinking, what kind of different angles that I've drawn can I use? I decided to go and draw like 2 of them because I thought it'd be a bit more interesting. Just the last one with just the one bird looked kind of boring just on its own. Someone in the chat was telling me there's only so many poses you can do with birds, and I was slowly discovering that as I was doing this, and now I'm intimidated to do the rest of them. But we're going with it. So I thought I'll do a lady one and a fella one. So I've got my little sketch of them sat on the tree, and then we're going to start working on that. I've also started keeping my references kind of to the side like this, just because it's a little bit easier for me to see. People keep suggesting I use pure ref, but that kind of gets in the way. I don't like that very much. I prefer splitting my clip windows. Anyways, I also didn't like the branches on the last one, so I'm trying to improve them on this. You can see I've got a bunch of references of them sat on little bits of trees and things. And a couple of references for the way I want it to kind of be colorized, or ideas for it at least, that I can kind of draw from and pick colors that I like and then kind of tweak them. There's an image in there of waxwings somewhere that I ref the colors from. You probably won't see it till a little bit later though, because I'm just tidying this up right now. I think I might have had a couple of false starts on this as well, where I started doing it and I didn't like the way it was going, so I just stopped and deleted it and restarted. That usually happens quite a lot with these things. But yeah, you can kind of see where I've got that little indication of like around the neck where that floof is, and then into the main chunk of the body, and then we have a little bit around the chest and the midline down the middle of them, so I can keep that consistent. Also in that little sketch, I indicated a little bit of the shadow just because I think that's going to help with blocking the shapes out. I think I managed to get a little bit more balance in this one as well. The last one seemed kind of heavy off to one side rather than like a kind of equally weighted composition. I had a little bit of a worry with this one because right now you can see it's kind of weighted off to one side with the branches being very heavily over on the left and then not so much down in the right corner. But I think I evened that out by adding more berries and things in. Anyway, here I go with the colors. I'm trying to make a point on these of going straight in with the colors so that I can see if I can get them right, and also to keep it a little bit more loose and painty than when I go and do grayscale to color, which I actually haven't done in a while. I've kind of been doing a lot more, I guess, just kind of cel shady stuff, so I'm having a bit of fun with painting with these. Anyway, I'm slapping my colors down. I'm looking at my refs. I'm trying to figure out some nice colors that I like. I really like the idea of having a really soft kind of green, very sagey green, and slightly more towards maybe very pale yellow in there, kind of cream almost, in the background. Just to, let all the other more saturated colors come out, like in the coral and the reds in the front, and also like contrast nicely with them. It's very like wish-washy at the moment also. it's like not contrasty enough at all. And I do still go and put more overlays and stuff on it a little bit later, just to kind of up the contrast on it. I'm trying to keep it like quite messy as well. I'm not trying to keep it really, really tight. There is something I like about it at this kind of stage though, just because it's quite loose, and you know, if it kind of reads like this at this point, then it's probably going to do okay further down the line, because it's like, you know, the first the first like 5% of time is like 90% of the work, and the rest of it is just tidying it up. The other 90% of the time is filling it all in. I got those percentages completely wrong, didn't I? Please please ignore that. I know what I'm talking about. Yes, 10 and 90%. I definitely said 10% and 90%. Absolutely. Anyway, there I go with a little bit of darker color. I had some issues with painting the beak just because it's kind of shiny and difficult to catch the right colors, but I got it in the end. I think I did it on like a separate layer later. Even now it's still kind of pasty though, look. Yeah, let's see, there's a lot of little cheeky gradients in there. I tried to get like a slightly blue for where the whites were, but there's also that kind of grey for the wing, and they ended up way too close to being the same colour, so I think I go and change that a little bit later. Little highlights on the berries to get an idea of that in. I think what I have been doing on this quite a lot, just because I'm not quite used to just going straight in with colours on the painting yet, is I'll go in and do it, and then I'll want to add, like, for example, the shine that I've just gone and put on the berries, which is something I could do way later and do it once and have it be like the final pass on it to get that on. But because I'm trying to see everything in the image at the same time and get like a good idea of what the colors are going to be, I want to put it on sooner just to see what it's like, and I think that's just from not having, you know, done that many paintings like this. I'm kind of used to doing it in a different way with a bunch of layers. I'm trying to force myself to reduce them quite a lot on this, and just letting myself make a mess and take a bit longer with it so that I can learn. It's the only way to learn, man. You make a mess with it, and you put stuff on once, and then you have to redo it tidier, even if it looks correct. But yes. Learning. I do my little tone curve corrections. I'll put a link to the tutorial for the tone curve thing actually, because this is a pretty good example of it. I recently did a shoot with it. I'll put a link to that at the end for y'all. And also I guess here in the video, if you want to go and open it now, I'll put a little annotation up in the corner. But that's kind of fixed my shadows a little bit. See, there's a bit more, it's a bit more of a form to them now, just with that shadow kind of underneath the main chunk of them. Something I was trying to do on this one as well was, in the refs, a lot of them don't have very direct lighting, or it's not very high contrast. So I was trying to keep mine kind of like that, but I ended up putting these nice big shadows in anyway, and then not wanting to wash them out very much because it was looking kind of, it looks a little bit kind of graphic designy at the moment, and I kind of like that because you've got blocks of color with little gradients in them, and they kind of look nice. They kind of look almost as though they could be like vectory stuff right now, and the colors are like working on it. So I wanted to leave it like that, and then just put a few more little nibbles on. But yeah, I think I'm getting a lot to the point where I'll get it to around where it is now and where it'll look nice and almost vectory, and then as I start adding more detail and I'll start hating it, so I'm trying to be really aware of that and figure out why, like if it's that I'm doing the little details wrong or not, or if it's something else, if it's just, you know, that's how it is. There's always a point when I'm drawing stuff where I'm like, uh-oh, it's looking like crap. And then you've got to get like through the kind of uncanny valley dip where you start putting more detail in and it starts looking off and weird. What else am I doing? I tried reducing or like washing out a lot of the things in the background. I kind of liked it looking misty and sort of dull, and I thought that would go well with it being a little bit more dispersed on the light. I guess it's not like super contrasty anyway. It's still quite soft, so it didn't work too bad. I know I go in and like Yeah, there I go with a little bit of the glow like that, just to pop the colors some more and give it a bit of a gradient like that, which I quite liked actually. It was making the kind of browns and also the orange coral. Yeah, the corals kind of pop out more. I did try to bring in a little bit more of that desaturation in though, just more gradients. The beak, like I say, was not behaving when I was first trying to do it. It was just looking a bit weird like that. But it gets done and tidied up later. Also, these birds look really goofy and funny right now. Like, if you look at the eyes on them, they just look off. Until I go and put that little shine on them, they just look real silly. Anyways, here I go with tidying up the beak. I think I do this in one go and then it looks like a lot better. Like a lot better once it's done. It's just kind of referencing it and getting it to stand out. It almost looks like it's a different color than the top of the head on them, just because of the sheen being kind of a different shape on them. Like I say, I'm still using that same brush, just in different sizes to nibble in little details and things like that. I'm trying to think if I used another one. I think I might have used a few kind of sharper ones just for putting little fur or like feather details in them later. But at this point, I'm still just using this. Oh, I'm checking the time lapse on it. I'm getting into the habit of checking the time lapse as I'm going through stuff. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet, because I keep doing it and then I'm like, oh, it looks like I've done nothing. Whoops. And then I get annoyed with myself. But I don't know. It's difficult to like quantify like how much you've done. I always feel like things take me too long. Anyways, I'm doing a little bit of that kind of lighter outline on them as well, just to get them to stand out a bit. Kind of bring them in front of all those other branches that are behind, just like a little bit more. I didn't think was too bad. Oh yeah, here we go with the little kind of floof details and just bringing some different colors in like that. They're not looking like terrible right now. I know I go and change the highlights in this in the ladybird's eyeballs just because the way that they were kind of made it look like she's got this 1,000-yard stare, and I don't really like it. I probably could have positioned them a little bit better, I think is what I mean. You can see I'm starting to do that little bit of a kind of outline on them as well as I'm going, as though it's almost line art just around the edges, so there'll be a little tiny bit more shadow. I didn't want any light coming in really from the back. I just wanted to be able to shade that in. I do feel like this one should have taken me not quite as long, just because there's not really any wing detail to put in. But I kept thinking like, oh, there's not enough detail on the front of them, but I knew if I went and put more detail in and made them like too fluffy, it would look really bad. So I'm trying to be like real careful. You can see me going in there with like a hairbrush to put a bunch of little strands on. I don't know if I kind of get rid of a lot of that later. I think this might be when it crashed actually, because I was painting all this stuff and then my computer crashed and I lost maybe half an hour, I think. Because the file was too big. Yeah, it will delete some at some point and open it back up. But yeah, I think that might have saved me from overworking some of this stuff. Just some of it. I got to keep most of it though. Most of it did not get deleted. Ooh, and then like different colours into the berries. That was the other thing. So you can see I'm just putting a little bit more kind of yellow in them. A little bit more yellow. There's probably too many that are like solid and not already eaten, but I wanted to fill the page out quite a lot with it. There's always there's also some little bunches in the background that you can see that are kind of blurred out as well. It looks like at this point I've blurred out the ones in the back, like the branches, so that's kind of tidied up a little bit. And then just, oh my god, all these little details on the berries. That was a lot. That was a lot of stuff to do. Just the little tops of them and kind of making them a bit bumpy, pulling the different colours around. I'm using a little bit of a sharper brush just for those tiny details, but any of the actual chunk on the berry with those different colours, I'm doing that with kind of the washy one. It looks like I've got a bit of texture on that tree bench as well. I think that's also a marker brush though. I'm kind of trying to stick to the marker brushes apart from like in a few little detail spots to keep it quite soft and round. That may have been when it crashed, actually. I can't, you can probably see in the chat, actually. I wasn't watching the chat. There is a point where it crashes, though, and I lose stuff, because the file is just too big. It's kind of crazy how big the file sizes get when you put the time lapses on. Because I was like, I was done with a sketch on a commission that I was doing the other day, and the file size with the time lapse was to about 700 megabytes, and then I went and deleted. Well, I saved it, like exported it, and then took the time lapse off, and it went down to 100, so it took off like 600 megabytes. And I was just like, wow. To be fair, I did spend quite a while on the sketch, and it was like a big canvas, but like, ooh, I think it's going to be a case of exporting things just occasionally to, you know, reset it and reduce the file size so it doesn't risk the computer crashing. Just because it was too much. Oh, that was the thing I did. I did a little bit of desaturation just on that kind of white that they have around the base of the tails, because it was looking a little bit too blue and it wanted some of that taken off it, so I kind of concentrated it around there and deleted some of it. The little feet, painting the little feet in. I think I actually, you know what, I think I had to redraw the feet. This is probably when it crashed. This is probably when it crashed. I had an issue with the way I draw the feet as well. I'm not liking the way I draw the feet. They seem to be a lot easier to do if you just kind of, in the kind of sketchy things where I'll paint them on, and, you know, you can do it very easily in 1 or 2 strokes just with the kind of line pen pressure on it. Makes it so much easier, but when you go and kind of block them down like this, they get way more difficult for some reason. Which is pretty annoying. You probably saw me going and put in a little bit more. What was it? Is it an overlay? Yeah, it's an overlay layer, just kind of around the edges of where those shadows are, on the chests of them to make them pop out a little bit more. And I think a little bit on the berries too. I've gone and put the highlights on those as well, but I think I might have done like a little bit of kind of bloom around them, maybe. Oh, just a whole bunch of nibbling, but I keep turning the overlay on and off, so it might be a little bit confusing to watch. Just so that things are easier to see as I'm painting underneath it. I have a bad habit sometimes of like leaving correction layers on over the top and then trying to paint underneath it and like selecting colours and then selecting the wrong ones and wondering why it looks wrong. That happens too often. Anyways, yeah, just these last little details on the feet. I think I go and do a little bit of like bounce light on the beak. Just on the lady one. It's starting to look a lot more finished now anyway. And yeah, I think we're almost done. I think that's just me doing little correction bits and kind of masking stuff off and making sure that I like where my values are and everything. And there we go. We are done with all of it. Yeah, just that bounce light on the beak. Yeah, there we go. We're done. Yay, there they are. I actually ended up flipping it as well because it worked a lot better that way, even though I painted it most of the way, going in the opposite direction. Yeah, it's half for watching. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, subscribe for new videos on Saturdays. I will be putting links to prints of this down in the description, as well as everywhere else you can find me that I post stuff. I also stream weekdays on Twitch. If you want to come and see me there, there'll be a link to that down there too. Leslie, here's a link to that video I mentioned earlier on the tone curve editing. So, yeah, have a watching, friendos. Bye-bye.